Let's take you live to Suva in Fiji. This is the Foreign Minister, Penny Wong.
The region is stronger together. It's a simple proposition. The region is stronger together. And in the bilaterals I've had, in the discussions I've had in my previous visits and in the dialogue today, leaders talked about the challenges the region faces: climate change, COVID and the recovery from COVID, both of which have fallen harder on this region than on many other parts of the world. And of course strategic competition. And all the nations of this region are seeking to navigate those challenges. All the nations are seeking to navigate those challenges. And we do it best when we can do it together. And that's the approach Australia's taken. That's the approach the Pacific Island Forum is taking, and that is why Pacific Forum unity is so important. Now, as you know, there have been a lot of discussions about Pacific Island Forum unity, and the position the Australian government has consistently taken is we were seeking to support whatever the consensus could deliver, because the most important thing was to ensure that at this time, in a contested world, in a world confronting climate, COVID and the economic recovery from COVID, that the Forum remained united. So I do want to commend Prime Minister Bainimarama and the Government of Fiji and leaders from the Micronesian states for their work to try and bring the Forum back together. We obviously have a Suva agreement which Australia is supportive of as the pathway to that unity. Can I note that we are continuing working towards further greater unity, and I note where the position that the leader of the President of Kiribati has articulated, and I say along with all other members of the Forum that we seek reconciliation and the door remains open, and we hope that progress can be made there. In that vein, I wish the President and the people of Kiribati all the best on their National Day, which is today. Happy to take questions. Okay, you go first.
The episode in the Micronesian split might be traced back to the election of the past Secretary General.
Sure.
It was obviously a very tight vote. You've been very critical of the previous government's efforts in the Pacific.
Sure.
How did Australia vote? Is it worth airing those grievances? No. Do you have a view on how damaging that episode has been?
No, I think my focus, along with those of the leaders in that room, is to try and do what we can to strengthen the Forum at a time where the Forum needs to be unified. That's the approach we've taken.
Minister, just on Kiribati, are you worried China will sweep in, to be blunt, and what is Australia doing to help remedy that situation?
I think Australia has taken the view that we should facilitate the discussions and the cooperation between the Micronesians and Prime Minister Bainimarama and others. That's the approach we're taking. Obviously, as I said, competition is one of the challenges the region faces, and we do think it's best faced together.
When will those discussions happen? And
they have happened.
The Fijian Prime Minister said this morning that PIF nations will either forge ahead together or take individual paths. How likely is that latter scenario? Is it something you're worried about?
I think we have to give this some time. I think that a lot has passed, a lot of progress has been made, and if you look to where the Forum was over a year ago now, we are in a much better place than we were, and that's a great tribute to leaders who've been prepared to come to the table when there were really, strong differences, some of which you've referred to. But obviously, where things are with Kiribati, we need to keep the door open and keep working towards reconciliation.
On climate change, was there any discussion of Australia hosting COP29 with Pacific nations?
I think Minister Conroy discussed it last week. Was that last week at the Foreign Ministers Forum that I only attended one session virtually because I was in Bali, and he may wish to go to that.
Thanks, Penny. And on the broader point, at the Foreign Ministers meeting last Friday, there was a real sense of enthusiasm and, quite frankly, a palpable sense of relief that Australia is back in the game of taking action on climate change. And the communique last week welcomed our action on climate change, including obviously 43% emissions reduction by 2030, on the way to a legislated net zero emissions by 2050, a commitment to a Pacific infrastructure financing partnership on climate change, a objective of our policy of reaching 82% renewable energy by 2030 was really welcomed by the region, and the communique also welcomed our interest in hosting a UN Conference of the Parties, a UN COP, in partnership with the Pacific. And it's fair to say in both that meeting and in our bilaterals, there's a real sense of enthusiasm for Australia undertaking that endeavour, but we'll see how it goes.
Just on a follow-up on that.
That's where we leave Pat Conroy and Penny Wong. They are live there in Suva, Fiji.